Hey guys, so it's been a few days. I keep trying to get better about making a schedule about when to upload videos, but along the way I keep learning new stuff of where to upload, what little things to click, and me not knowing that much about technology. I hadn't really updated myself on technology just because I didn't grow up around it. I had, a computer for school when I went back to school, but as far as it just seems technology is happening faster and faster. So, and then we had the holidays again. I hope everybody had a good New Year's. I did. I had a friend invite me over, cook dinner for me, watch, say, let's watch this movie. We watched a movie. Um, and so, one of the things I've been working on is relationships, not just with myself, but with other people. And so I've been researching a lot about aphantasia. I made a video about that, and for those of you who don't know, go look it up. It's pretty interesting. But so for years, I didn't know that this was a thing. I just thought like everybody thought the way that I thought, and so I can't I've said this before, and I know I repeat myself a lot, but it's a separate video. So for those of you who haven't watched other ones that I made, it's where when you close your eyes, you can't visualize anything. You can't pull up visual images. So with memories, people might say, "Oh, I went to Disneyland," and they can pull up that visual image or those memories, and it's like it replays in your mind. For me, that doesn't happen. It's more of a factual events. And this is something I've learned watching the videos about it and researching about it. It's more of the sequence of events that happen. Like I know if I've been somewhere. Usually a feeling's attached to it. So it's, somebody's got to give me prompts about, remember when we went this place? Oh, you were wearing this, you were doing this, and then I'll be like, oh, yeah. But a lot of times it's like once I get there, then I'll say, oh, yeah, I was here before. It does something to your memory because your memory's very much in the present. That's something that I learned is because you don't have those visual images to pull up, you're almost always in the present of what's happening. And they say that a lot of us, they don't know exactly. They say some of it's from birth and some of it's accidents could happen. Things, brain damage could happen. And I know for me, I've had a lot of head trauma in my life. Um, and maybe that did something, I don't know. But I mean, I could remember when I was little that I would close my eyes and whatever I imagined would turn really mean and scary. And so I've said in a previous video, it's like I would think of an angel. Nope, the angel turned scary. Think of a, bear. Nope, it turned scary. And I came up with this solution of think of one of those lollipops like you used to get, on trips at Stuckey's, the rainbow ones that go round and round. And then I was like, that can't turn scary. And then I thought, did I like hypnotize myself? And then now I can't visualize. But I don't remember as a child ever being able to pull up a visual image. I always remember in school when they would tell you close your eyes and imagine. An apple, I'd be like, well, I don't see it. I know what an apple looks like. I know the factual things about an apple. I can describe it to you. But then I'd be like, what kind of apple? What color? What, like pulling on all the references. So it's a lot of factual information stored in your brain that's how you memorize things. Sequence of events, details, but not being able to visualize it. And I thought like how a lot of my self-reflection's been like how have things that I've discovered about myself affected me in my own relationship with myself and affected others in relationships that I've had with others. And so one thing that I realized is um, that it keeps you in the present a lot and it can make your other senses like hypersensitive. like they could compensate for that. So it's like if you were blind, people that are blind, they can hear better, or they can feel things better, because those other senses take over. And for me, a lot of it had been feelings a lot. Is I could step into a room and I could tell you the temperature of the room. I could tell, do these people like each other? That person over there, seems like they're upset. Because a lot of times it's paying attention to micro expressions. And they say, like, some of us that were born in chaos, or things like that, that could affect it. But I've always been that person that people would ask me later on, well, how did you know? How did you know that was going to happen? And it would be like, well, because I've experienced a lot of the same type of people in different places. And I think a lot of us that maybe it is moving around, maybe it is traumas, maybe it is, being that hyper vigilant as a child, knowing like, is that person mad? Is that person sad? Is that person, what are they saying and what are they doing? And it's always been a strength of mine of like seeing the thing behind the thing. Somebody say, I'm okay. And then I could hear the defensiveness. I could, see, well, yeah, you're smiling, but are you smiling with your eyes? Like, is that a true smile or is that a fake smile? And that made me good at my job because a lot of people, I worked with the homeless, and a lot of them are in trauma, and a lot of them have been conditioned to keep their mouths shut, to not complain, to not be reactive, to not say how they're feeling. But once, trust was established, like people would open up to me. And then a lot of times it would be, well, this person told me this, and I was the person who was always like, well, who's that person to you? Does it matter what they think? Who cares what they think? You are not a reject. You are not, all bad. You're not. And it made me good at helping other people. But I think this did a lot of damage to me because then I'd feel like I'm the one to make sure that everybody's okay. I'm the one to take care of the thing behind the thing, take care of their pain behind the smile, take care of, their fear that they're not showing. And so that's something that I've been working on is understanding like, oh, that's why I would want routine things. That's why I ask for details about things. For me, it's like they say that people that have aphantasia, it's conceptual thinking. It's like abstract thinking, which then I was like, no wonder I can see everybody's point of views. I could think outside the box a lot of times, come up with solutions, do critical thinking in the moment, all that. But sometimes it's so much in the present that you're just like waiting to exhale. That I would say that so many times is like, can I get a break? Can I please just relax? Can I know that if I do A, B, and C, that D's gonna happen? Because if I'm putting in all the work and then I don't get the visual, I don't get the experience, the memory of, I went to that place and it was great, then I'm caught in a loss. Then it's like something never comes to fruition. Something never happens. Never made it to that place. Never got to experience that thing. So then it's like the loss of something that you thought you would experience. So I was caught in these losses a lot. And I would say especially the past couple of years, it was like doing the work and doing the work and doing the work for the end result to be that I would get to the end of something of, okay, I'm going to do all the planning. I'm going to do all the preparing. going to do, well, things keep switching and changing. Everybody keeps changing the rules, changing the timing, changing the things. And this would send me, because I'm emotionally there all the time, this would send me into a frenzy of, I can't take it anymore. Can I get a break? Can I rest and relax and not have to memorize everybody's everything? Memorize everything, tell everybody the steps to do. Because if you don't have a support system behind you, making sure you're okay, knowing when you're saying I'm fine, that you're not fine, that you need help. Or so it would send me into this, like, does anybody see me? Is anybody paying attention to me? And now I'm speaking out. Now I'm saying I'm not okay. And for me, a lot of times in the past, especially when I was younger, it was like I was silenced a lot and told, like, don't tell how you feel. Don't complain. Because if you complain, now we're going to talk about how you complained, not about the thing you're complaining about. I know my job had sent me into this a lot, and relationships that I had sent me into this a lot, where I started speaking up and speaking about myself and saying, like, this thing doesn't make me feel good. Or the last time I went there was a negative feeling that was attached to it. So, can I have a minute to not go there again? Or can I know that you got my back? So that I can feel emotionally safe in order to go relax and have fun and do things. But for the past couple years, it's been a lot of, no, everybody would just rather me be quiet. Everybody would rather me. I'm really good at the planning out stuff. I'm really good at the here's A to B to C, or constantly replaying even to clients because they're in trauma and they don't remember what happened. They don't remember, I with my car accident, I don't remember everything. I had a concussion. That was a scary feeling for me. And then it's going on, oh, I remember certain events, certain parts, but I don't remember everything. And that's a scary feeling in itself. But so for me, having this and realizing this about myself of I don't have those visual images to pull up. I have the feelings. I have the, oh yeah, I felt good when I went there. So I would want to go do that thing again, to have that good feeling. But if trying to get there is exhausting, then, or if I do all the work and then I don't get the reward, don't get the experience, then it would keep me in these losses. This, well, I imagined in a abstract way or a conceptual way of this work is worth it because by the end, then I get to go on vacation. Then I get to go have fun. But if I'm the one tasked to do everything, because that's a strength of mine, then it would be like, I'm exhausted from the working and working and working. I'm exhausted from the organizing everything. I'm exhausted from the reminding everybody. I'm exhausted from everything else. Can somebody else take over for a second and help? And so I thought I'd make a video about that I always wonder, like, is that an issue maybe if for people who can't visualize? Because I've always been a truth teller because I'm paying attention to what's going on around me. I'm paying attention to the news. I'm paying attention to people when I'm out. And then, like I said, it would be a strength a lot of times that I would be like, okay, I think this is probably going to happen, or I think this person is probably like this. But then people would go, no, that's not what's going to happen, or that's not what's, what that person's about. And then later on, it would be revealed, and then people would be like, how did you know? I'm like, I don't pattern recognition. Like, I've just been paying attention more and more and more to everything going on. So, I mean, if it's that whole, like they say, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it probably is a duck. I mean, I've had people surprise me here and there, but for the majority of the part, I had moved around so much in my life, experienced so many different people, that I could probably walk into a room and say, that person's the bully. That person's the insecure person. That person's the think they know everything person. That person's the attention seeking. Because I'd be like, well, at my last school, that's the way that person behaved. A lot of people are predictable. So I'd just be like, I'm just predicting based on what I've seen, what I've heard, and people would just, I had one person who was always like, does it hurt you being right? I'm like, no, but what hurts me is when you didn't believe me in the first place. And then whenever I'm right, you take it as a ding against you. You know what I mean? Obviously, it hurts you that I'm right because you didn't believe me. And I'm just paying attention, or like, are you paying attention? And I think part of that comes from my childhood and, pay attention, stand up straight, a very militant childhood of pay attention to what's going on. Now, I know in my past, there's been several times I haven't paid attention, even to myself, that somebody would say, well, you did this, or you were behaving this way. And then I would have to think about it, think back to, because I don't have the visuals, but I'd be like, oh yeah, I was. You're right. Or, oh yeah, it did happen that way. But also, here's the rest of the details. It's like a prompt, needing a prompt. And I'd be like, oh yeah, thanks for that prompt. That brought back, this is the sequence of events. Sometimes I think in defensiveness, all of us, are only concerned about ourselves. But I think sometimes a strength that I had is I could kind of rise above that and be like, okay, well, what was the other person thinking? What was their point of view? What was their feelings? Especially working with my job, it was a lot of empathy. You can't, I would tell people, I don't know what it's like to be street homeless, because I've never been on the streets. But there has been times where I have been in hotels or, not knowing where I was going to live the next day, trying to find a landlord that would rent to me. I would tell them, I know that feeling. Like, that's my connectivity to you, is I know fear. I know the worry of not knowing what's next. And being able to say, because I know that, I don't want you to be fearful. I don't want you to, reach that point or whatever. So let's try to plan. Let's try to get you the help that you need. A lot of it was, people, I would tell them, I know pain. So if you tell me you're in pain, I'm going to try to do whatever I can to alleviate it. If you tell me that you're worried, I know worry. If you tell me you're worried about money, then I'm going to be like, all right, let's sit down and let me help you to come up with something to where you can make more money or you can hold on to your money or whatever. So you're not worrying about money, because then that'll alleviate that worry. But I know for me, a lot of it was the way that I think. I don't have those visuals to pull up. So a lot of times it doesn't keep me in. It doesn't slam me back to the past of I think I'm in that moment again. For me, it would be this is happening again. If somebody had left me and walked out on me, rejected me or kicked me out, I'd be like, this is happening again. I don't like how this is feeling. It does remind me of how I used to feel. So could you stop doing it? Because it's happening again. But they say there's the flip side of that, hyperphantasia, where people get stuck in those images as if it's happening, as if they're there in the past where it happened. And for me, I don't know. I don't know that feeling because for me, it's always been get over it. Eventually I'll get over it. But if it keeps happening, then I'm the one who says, this is happening again. What can we do to resolve it? And then that portion of my brain would show up of, let's make a plan. Let's come up with some sort of solution. Could we have some routine? Could we have, could I know that on this day, whatever's going to happen, so that I don't get in that fear of stuff is never going to happen. I think trauma does something to our thoughts and our feelings. There's, studies where they say trauma can change people's perceptions. Some people can get stuck in it and not know how to get out. And that was a strength that I had where I could, tell people, okay, but that's not now. That's not happening right now. So what's happening right now? You're okay right now. You're in my car. We're going to go to wherever. We're going to try to get you the help that you need. Because for me, visually, I think it made me kind of hyper aware, I guess, of my visual surroundings, of I'm paying attention. So much so that I see the cat over there doing whatever. I see the laundry over there that needs folded. I see, all these different angles. And sometimes it makes it hard to focus. But it's like trying to absorb all the visual information because I can't store the pictures up there. I can't pull them up. And one detriment would be, I don't know if I said it in this video or another, but would be like the planning of it, where I would say, okay, I've got in my mind this idea of something, of what's going to happen, or, something I'm going to get. And then I would do the research. And I'd be like, okay, in order to get to said place, get to experience whatever live, that's probably why I like live things, because I can't visualize them until I'm there. That if it was, I'm going to do the planning, I'm going to do the work, I'm going to do this, sometimes it becomes emotionally overwhelming. With my job, it was, I'm trying to keep track of everybody else's stuff because they can't remember it all because they're still going through trauma. So then it would be like, I have to memorize all of that stuff. Plus, I have to memorize everything at home. I have to make sure that everybody's okay all the time. Is anybody seeing me? Is anybody seeing that I'm not okay? I used to be very quiet and feel like it was wrong to speak up because I was silenced a lot. Or because by the time I spoke up, people would say, what's the problems? And I would tell them, and then they'd be like, oh, now you're the problem. We don't want to hear that. where I would be like, I'm just the person reporting, I'm the messenger reporting what the problem is. Sorry if you don't want to hear what the problems are, but in order to get past them, you have to acknowledge them in the first place, and then you have to come up with plans and solutions to change them, to make things better, or more productive. And that's the analytical part of my brain, where I'd be like, I can't memorize everything for everybody and myself because it's overload sometimes. And then if I don't get the reward, if it'd be like, keep working, we're going to get you some help. I'd be like, okay. And then later on, I'd be like, okay, I really need some help. Could I get some help out here? Could I get some funding? Could I get something? And they'd be like, no, we're going to do that. Keep working. And eventually I'd just be like, I can't do this by myself anymore. We had a change where a boss went away, and then we got a couple, in between, one that came and went, another that came and went, and then we got another third. And by the time I saw that last boss, it was right before I quit. It was the very first meeting where they asked us to introduce ourselves and what we did. And when I introduced myself, I just started crying and got very emotional and very, I guess it would be like aggressively emotional, but I was just like, I can't do this by myself, and people are out there dying, and people need help, and I can't get any funding, and I can't get any, just on and on. Well, I think this person got in their mind, oh my gosh, she's mentally unstable, emotionally unstable, she's this and this, because it was based on that one time. Whereas for me, from my point of view, it was like, you are like the third person that's come in that I'm trying to tell, I've been asking and asking and asking, and I wrote it. I wrote the emails. Yeah, I talked to that other person. I talked to the hires up. I've tried to make people aware. And then, so then I would think like, okay, we got somebody again. Let me tell them. But by the time I'm telling them, I'm like, I am drowning out here. Like, I am going through vicarious trauma. I am, using the jargon that they would understand. I'm like, I am enduring a lot because everybody that I encounter is homeless and doesn't have a place to go, and they're starving and they're cold, and they're, in the summer they're hot, and they're, they have all these basic needs. So could I get some help? But then it became about me, where it was like, I think this person had a perception of, this is not how I am usually. This is me at the end of my ropes, like asking for help and explaining like I just can't take it anymore. And I think for me, a lot of times that's been me even in interpersonal relationships, is telling people like, I've been telling what the issues are and the problems. I'm asking for some help. I don't need help with whatever it is that you want to help with. I'm sufficient in that. Can I get help with this other thing that I don't know that maybe you know about? But then sometimes I've had those relationships where they're competitive, where it's like, oh, well, I would have helped you out with the trash, but you already did that. Like, yeah, I just took it out. It's not a competition, or when we'd have arguments, if they portrayed to me, like, you're this horrible person, and I'm like, I'm not. Remember when I did this and this and this for you? Remember when I was there for you? Remember when I showed up for you? Remember when I held you when you cried? Remember that? That's me. And then they'd be like, yeah, you're just better than me. Or you just did that just because to hold over my head now. When I'm like, no, I'm just reminding you who I am. Because in your mind right now, you have this version of me that is not me. Do you know who I am? because I know who I am and I'm trying to express to you who I am. But I think sometimes if people don't know who they are, then they project. And I know for me, this is where like the aphantasia would be, I don't have the memory recall of being in the same place where we used to be. I have the feeling of it. I have a feeling of, I'm feeling like I'm invisible. I'm feeling like this is happening again. Is it happening again? And if somebody told me, oh, you're just like you were way back when I'm like, no, I'm not the same person. This is what's happening. Do you believe what's happening? Are your eyes open? Are your ears open? Because for me, it was, I'm paying attention to the things that are going on around me. I'm listening to the things that are going on around me. I'm very aware and very in the present. But if the past keeps happening to the present, where I'm like, I'm feeling rejected. Are you rejecting me? And then get no response. Or, get told you're just being this negative way that I'm like, I'm not. I'm asking you what's going on. Do you know what's going on? Or a person would say, I didn't leave you. You know what I mean? Like, I would say like, well, you don't have to leave me to leave. You don't have to physically get up and leave to leave me. And they would say, yes, I do. No, you could walk around me and ignore me and not help me and not talk to me and not, stay in this absence of where I'm like, why are you here? Because I don't think you're here. I don't see you doing anything, like you're not seeing me. You're not talking to me. You're not hearing me. You're not helping me. Then are you here? And then I would try to talk out things of like, what's your definition? Let's talk about the definitions of things. What do you think a friendship is? To me, a friend is somebody who shows up and loves you unconditionally. It's not well, if you're mean to me, I won't help you. If you're mean to me, I won't speak to you. That's not a friend to me. Or I would ask, like, what is love? Is love conditional or unconditional? I've always tried to be the person who, I say, if I love you, you're going to know it. I'm probably going to do things for you. I'm probably going to give you gifts. I'm probably going to talk great about you. I'm probably going to, all the love languages. Because when I love, it's intense. But then if the other person's already made up their mind, that's not love to me. That's control, or that's this, or, I'm suspicious of that or something, then there's nothing you can do to change their thinking. And I think that's where I've realized, like, my thinking's a lot different. I have always been like an open-minded person of like, I don't think black or white a lot. I would say when I was younger, I was taught this is right and this is wrong. And, these people are right or these people are wrong. And then as I grew up, I was like, oh, let me expand my thinking of putting myself in other people's shoes, of seeing other people's points of view, of saying, just because you did this one thing doesn't make you a horrible person. That's just a mistake that happened, and you have to get past it. You have to forgive yourself and move beyond it. But I know for me, this figuring out that I've dealt with this aphantasia, I'm like, that would make sense why so much is I get caught in the losses a lot of times of the, well, I did all the work and I waited and then I didn't get the reward. I got left behind or I got rejected. Because at the very end, when I couldn't take it anymore and I expressed, after the talking, after the writing, after the music, after the whatever things that I'm like, I don't start out that way. I first try to talk in this way, then I try to use an analogy. I try to use something that the other person, knows about. I try to relate. I try everything that I can. Well, then I'm probably going to explode. I'm probably going to be like, you know, maybe if I yell, they'll hear me. But then if that's the only view that that person has, then there's nothing I can do about that. There's nothing because they go, see, that's who you are. I already knew that way from the beginning. And I would get caught in these losses of, you don't see me. You only see me in the negative. You only see me in the extremes. You only see me when you think I'm perfect or when you think I'm the villain. You don't see the gray areas of me. You don't see the all the differences, and I think that a lot of our world is kind of caught in that. We are so divided right now, especially in our country, in the United States, of everybody saying like it's either this or that. You're either right or wrong. You're either good or bad. Because they slap labels on people. They slap labels on things. This happens a lot. Like, remember when they said eggs are bad for you, don't eat eggs. And then the next thing you know, it's like eggs are good for you, eat eggs. And it sends people into, I can't make up my own mind. I'll wait for people to tell me. But we learn as we go. So they might give information out where they're like, this is all bad for you. Don't do it. And then later on, they're like, oh, actually, that was a good thing. Never mind. Now eat eggs. We're telling you should do that. And I guess for me, I've been, especially the past several years, I make up my own mind. I'm doing the research. Like, I'm looking up like what all of sometimes my research goes pretty deep where I'm just like, I'm reading all the reviews. I'm looking at what other people have said. Was that a good product? Like, did it help their back? Did it, what are the ingredients in it? Or, just because I'm trying to, I guess, just help people in whatever way that I can. And try to do it with the knowledge or the gifts that I have. But that's all without being able to, pull up visual images to visually imagine anything. I just know that for me, a lot of my visual stuff with my job was I see people in trauma every day. I see it. I see the pain every single day, and I can't help but feel it. I have empathy for them. Sometimes it would be, so much empathy, like compassion, fatigue of like, I'm feeling everything that everybody else is feeling and I just can't take it. Can I just have a quiet night and just put on something stupid and not think that I have to keep learning and researching and feeling and everything else? But I had missed out on so many things that, I'd be like, I want to go to that concert. I want to go on that trip. I want to go to that social setting. I want to, do whatever. But by the time I got there, it's like, well, you're too reactive now, or you're not in a good mood, so therefore I'm going to go without you. I'm going to leave you behind, or I'm going to reject you, and then having to teach myself, like, I can't stay in those losses. I can't stay in the what could have been. I have to move forward. Teaching myself, well, I guess you're going to have to take yourself to a game. I guess you're going to have to take yourself to a concert. I guess you're going to have to do it for yourself. And then knowing in my mind that because I've been this way a lot of my life, hopefully the next person doesn't think, oh, you're too self-sufficient. Why don't you need me? You're too independent. That I'd be like, well, I can't help what I've been through, and that I've had to teach myself things and rely on myself. I can't help. Like, those are strengths that I have. I will, rely on people if I know, like, are you going to show up? Because if you don't show up, then guess what? I'm just going to get stronger. I'm just going to be more self-sufficient. I'm just going to retain more knowledge up here of, okay, I had to memorize the steps of that because there was nobody else around to do that. I had to teach myself that thing because there was nobody else around. So for any of us out there that maybe are experiencing that, I thought maybe that's something with being seen and heard. Maybe that's something with the feeling of where you feel alone or you feel rejected, because it's like then your strengths that you have are used against you. And that shouldn't be the way it is. I would say that the people in my life that have shown me that they cared, it's like they respect my strengths. They respect that I'm independent. Like, they get it. They think, like, that's good that I have this smart girl that I know that can figure out stuff, because that's what she spent her life doing, and not be competitive with it, not compare themselves, not think that I'm trying to prove something. Because for me, it's just been about, like, we just got to get the work done so that we can have fun and relax. And that's, what I strive for. So I guess that's what call it a sabbatical. I had a friend call it a sabbatical. That's what this is kind of done. And I've even thought about that about my cars. Like, maybe the universe was like, just sit down and chill out. Because I would have been right back out there. Going, skipping lunch, helping everybody with everything, because I don't want people to be in pain. I don't want people to feel not seen and not heard. I don't want people to feel like people forget about them, or that they're not wanted. So it's made me, concentrate on myself more, and then tell myself that it's okay to be selfish. I used to tell my clients that it's okay to be selfish. Selfishness is not a bad word. It's when people take it to the extremes and they become self-centered and they only make it about themselves. And they don't care about what's happening to the people around them. And they, only want for themselves and nobody else. And a lot of my clients would just say, oh, I thought it was all bad. I say, no. Sometimes you have to keep things for yourself. You can't give away all of your stuff, because then you have none, So it was almost like in helping my clients that I was helping myself. And then in self-reflecting, realizing, oh, that's why I think this way. Like, duh. No wonder I'd be like, but I wanted to go to the thing. Like, I didn't have a picture in my head. I was waiting to experience it. And then I didn't get to, even though I did all the work. And knowing, like, where to put my energy, who to invest in, and keep paying attention to what's going on around me. Because I have to be the one, to create my own experiences, create my own joy. Not leave it up to somebody else of like, could you treat me like a human being, like I am? Could you treat me like I'm not invisible because I'm here the whole time, even if you don't see me? Like, you notice, do you notice that I'm the one that's been doing all this stuff and holding it together? But, and a lot of that has to do with forgiveness. Some people don't realize what they're doing. And people aren't paying attention to what's going on around them because they're caught in their head. They're caught in a flashback or, in some picture that they've painted or some memory that they've put you in. So, anyway, just some things I've been figuring out, and hope everybody's having a good New Year's. And I'll chat with you later. Bye.